particularly excited that you're here. Because as you know, a symposium goes back to Etruscan times. We're going back before the Greeks because the Etruscans included women. In our program, we have women and men. So we don't want to just look at the Athenian symposia. We want to look at the Etruscan ones. And these were gatherings where people debated, had dialogue, shared food and drink, engaged in the discussion of ideas. Sometimes outsiders came, sometimes they didn't. It's still a symposium if you're here to discuss ideas. The exciting thing about this is that the second-year students have each chosen their topics and have pulled them together from what they've been thinking about over the past 2 years as they've negotiated these freshman and sophomore years of college and as they've selected their majors. So we look forward to hearing from each of them and learning from them, and we hope you'll all have questions, because one of the things at symposia that you do is you participate. You're part of the audience and you're expected to have questions and also join us with food and drink. Thank you very much for coming. And now I will turn to Yuki Kapa, who after his first year in the CAS Leadership and Ethical Development Program, formed a leadership program in his town of Charlotte, North Carolina. And he's here to tell you about it and how he's expanded it. Mr. Kapa.
Hello, my name is Yuki Kapa, and I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I was born and raised until I was 9 years old in Pleiku, Vietnam, a beautiful community south of Da Nang in the southern part of Vietnam. I am now pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Business Administrations with specializations in Management and Entrepreneurship in the CAS School of Business. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank you all for taking your Friday afternoon to be here. Feel free to ask me any question that you may have after my presentation. So my project grows out of concern for people who, because they lack the access to education, are not fully empowered to make meaningful and positive changes in their communities and in their own lives. As a result of not getting a better education, they are poorly equipped to join efforts to address the world's biggest challenges, such as environmental destruction, educational inequality, economic decline, and limited health access that affect us all. I am most concerned with educational inequality and access to education. Many do not even grasp the concept that education is essential for personal advancements and for the advancement for their children and for the betterment of the communities. My goals are to identify solutions to the problems of access to education and to enhance appreciations for the power of educations that can transform lives. Based on my personal life experiences and my passion for educations, I believe there are concrete actions I can take that others can access to educations. Once we have started the process of getting more people to educations and helping unite them in understanding shared problems, these more educated individuals can work together on solutions to the economic, environmental, and health threats to our continued existence on Earth. To address this issue, I founded the Leadership Journey program. Today, I want to talk about one aspect of these organizations and the part I'm working on first. This is an online leadership training program designed to help individuals who are either high school dropouts or college dropouts without sufficient financial assets to attend higher education, who do not know how to access scholarships and grants or how to use community educational resources. This program will be accessible through an open source website, which is freely available to these individuals. The program will begin with an evaluations and assessment to help them better understand how to advance from where they are to where they would like to go. After taking the assessment, they should be able to know what they need to work on and possible paths they can follow to advance. This program will continue to provide information and training materials for those who have decided to go on this journey. Students on this journey will meet with professionals and successful college students who are on track to graduate. These mentors, however, will not need to be able, we will be able face to face. The professionals and successful college students who have made these stories and the steps of their journeys and the information they use to become successful available to the writers of the programs. The writers will have included these stories in teaching materials in the form of manga. So this is one of the graphic novels that Culture will pass out to different kind of graphic novels. So a manga is basically an interactive graphic novels to illustrate and teach leadership in college and careers. The manga is the key to engaging the students and teaching them. Students who stay with the program can also connect with professionals and college students and other volunteers who have been trained to coach us on the journey. These volunteers will be available through the website for one-on-one consultations. As the students are completing the first part of the journeys and moving on to career choices, they will have the opportunity to meet with professionals in the field that they're interested in pursuing. I set up this program in a preliminary form during the summer after my first year in the CAS Leadership and Ethical Development Program, simply called CAS Lead. When I went home to work in Charlotte, North Carolina, I recognized that there were many in my community who seemed stalled in their education and careers. So I set up meetings and a program study to teach what I had been learning in an attempt to try to help them how to start to move forward. I have continued this work during my second year with CAS Lead. While I'm still in touch with these students in Charlotte, I recognize that I can do more to help them and others who are in the same situations. Thus, I have connected with professionals in different fields, and I'm gathering their stories and the steps that they use for their stories and the recommendations they have for achieving success. I have chosen the interactive manga form because so many of the people who I've worked with respond best with graphics with less text. I want to ensure that the program I design is most engaging and effective for these individuals who have thus fallen off the path to success, or how to get back on it, or how to start learning again. I work on this as an academic project. I have yet not sought or obtained outside funding. Once I have a more detailed blueprint of the program, I will seek funding, although I will continue to rely on volunteers to work with the students. One of the places I will look for funding is the incubator from the Colgate School of Business. But I have also discussed this with professionals who may want to contribute in giving back to students in their communities. My plans for the future include expanding the program and its platforms to reach college students to better meet their needs, voices, and their struggles. One of the things that is hard to know about today college students is how much problem they face and how hard it is for them to get real coaching and assistance for their problems. So I will be next working to address the issues that include public speaking, time management, studying effectively, balancing social, academic, and work lives, and also taking advantage of all the resources and opportunities that offer to them on campuses and in the surroundings communities, that without burning out or giving up. So ultimately, once we start reaching less educated students and college students in distress, I would like to work on gathering all the graduates from the program at all levels, as well as students in general. If we can bring them together, either face-to-face or virtually, I believe that we can identify and work on the world's biggest challenges. It is important to engage this constituency. We need to come together to work on these problems. We need to recognize that we are here on Earth together and that we are one. This is just the beginning. Thank you. Are there any questions? All right. Yes.
How do you reach your students?
How do I reach my students? So I have the Facebook group pages online So I'll basically chat with them once in a while, just kind of get an idea of like where they at and what they still need help with. So that's one way that I reach out to them. I also have their numbers, so if they, if they really need help, they can just text me or call me. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, how do you see your program kind of developing in like the next like 5 years? Like, what would you like to see happening?
So like,
Repeat your question, please.
I mean, I get it. So.
No, we didn't hear it.
Oh.
I asked how
No,
would
could you repeat
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
question?
So she asked that, what's my plans after 5 years or 10 years from now on. So like I have connected and worked with the director of the U.S. Department of Treasury. Like he gonna connect me with professionals and other like donors that may want to be part of this program. Yep. What about you, German? Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm gonna pass to Lily.
Hello, I am Allie Driven.
I'm Catherine Moria. And I'm Sophie Brooks. And today we're presenting a symposium on sisterhood to leadership, misconceptions about Greek life and the opportunities it presents.
So we represent 3 different sororities on our campus. I am a sister of Phi Mu,
I am a newly initiated sister of Phi Sigma Sigma.
and I am a sister of Delta Gamma. So the media views Greek life, especially sororities, in a very negative way. And I looked at 2 sort of pop culture references as case studies for this example. The first one was the book Dirty Rush, written by Taylor Bell. Taylor Bell is a real person, and this was her sort of fictionalized first-hand account of what it was like to pledge a sorority as a 5th-generation legacy in a state school in the South. Greek life is taken very seriously there. This woman, Taylor, did not even rush. However, she was just given a bid and immediately started pledging due to her legacy status. She had to follow tons and tons of rules when she was pledging. For example, she could not eat at certain restaurants. There were certain foods she had to avoid on campus and in the college town. She could only associate with certain members of the Greek community. There were other Panhellenic women in the Greek community who she was not allowed to associate with. And it was a very difficult process for her. In addition, they were not allowed to leave their dorm room or the house unless they were put together and they looked respectable. So I personally did not have to follow any of these rules. My sorority does not haze. So it was very interesting to see a firsthand account of what it was like to have to be a part of this process and have to follow all of these rules. The second case study that I looked at was Legally Blonde, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And for that, I chose the scene where she got accepted to Harvard, because Elle Woods more or less got accepted to Harvard because she's attractive. In this scene, it shows a room full of men, and they are reviewing her audition tape, her application tape, and they pretty much only accepted her because she is attractive. And they sort of came up with other reasons as to why they should accept her, but it was very obvious that those reasons were false.
So my experience in the Greek community is a little bit different than my two colleagues here. I ended up rushing as a sophomore. So about Greek life, to me, it was mostly what I had seen in TV and movies. So the misconceptions about hazing, cookie cutter versions of girls in preppy outfits, all looking the same, low GPAs, only there to party. And as someone who individuality was very important to me, it wasn't something that I thought I could see myself in. So I fell victim to these misconceptions, but my experience with Phi Sig has been completely eye-opening. None of these are true. I was not hazed. That's something that we don't do. No two people in my sorority are alike. I love all these girls for different reasons. In some ways we are similar, but they're such a diverse group of women, and I'm so happy to be a part of it now.
So I have up on the PowerPoint a few different stereotypes that are very common against sorority women, and I have some refutes for them. So the first one is that all sorority girls are preppy. While that may be true for a large portion of sorority girls, Catherine is a great example as to why that's not true, as you can probably see. The second example is that sorority girls are not intelligent. Sophie will actually talk more later about GPAs and sororities, but at least on our campus, and I'm sure on many other campuses across the country, Greek life has a higher GPA than the rest of the student body. Another stereotype is that all sorority girls do is party, which is incredibly false. At Penn State University, the entire Greek community and others not involved in the Greek community just raised over $9 million for Children's Miracle Network hospitals in their dance-a-thon, which is a huge philanthropy event. I think it's about 72 hours of dancing, but Greeks do more than just party. Another stereotype is that sorority girls are not feminists, so I will actually touch on later. And lastly, sorority girls are not diverse, and sorority girls are all the same. Very, very untrue. In my organization alone, we have sisters who are from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Germany, and tons more countries. Recently, there was a New York Times article released entitled, "When a Feminist Pledges a Sorority." And I read this article and I thought it was really interesting because I didn't really, when I went through recruitment, I didn't necessarily see the link between feminism and being in a sorority. I definitely understood the whole idea of women's empowerment, but I didn't necessarily see how being a feminist would affect whether you decided to pledge a sorority or not. And in the article, it discusses more or less how all of these girls originally thought that pledging a sorority was anti-feminist. And then once they were a part of the organization, they realized just how false that is, and that being in a sorority is actually quite a feminist thing to do. Then Total Sorority Move released an article in response to that. And a very notable quote from that article, as you can see, is it talks about the idea of building other women up and not judging other women for their ideas, no matter what their ideas are, and that hurting or making fun of another woman or judging another woman's choices is actually the opposite of feminism. The Total Sorority Move article talks about how women can be both feminists and be a stereotype. And I personally agree with that one more. Because there's nothing that says just because you're a feminist, you can't wear pink. There's no written rule that says that feminists can't choose to care about how they dress or be in a sorority, which was sort of what the New York Times article was alluding to. So I think that there is a good balance between the two, but definitely joining an all-women's organization is very, very empowering.
So a lot like the women in the New York Times article, I had thought that pledging a sorority was a little bit anti-feminist, but eventually after seeing the positive experiences, the women in my life who I respected and had become friends with over freshman year, they had such positive experiences with Greek life. And come this spring, I thought, you know what, why not? I might as well just go through recruitment and see if something fits. So in the end, I ended up joining a lot because of the community. I had gone to an all-girls high school, and I didn't realize that I would, but I did miss those strong female friendships that are a big part of my life. Also, I was into kind of the idea of the philanthropy. I was very active in volunteering in high school, but had kind of lost that when I came to college. I was kind of floating around, not really knowing what to do, how to get involved, and joining a sorority has definitely changed that for me. As well as the leadership roles that being in such an organization on a campus offers. I am currently a member of the Diversity, Inclusion Committee, which is new this year to Phi Sigma Sigma. We recently put on this great event where all our sisters attended, and we talked about things such as we had a campaign actually that was hashtag just don't say it, so things that people say that are kind of considered microaggressions about things such as race and gender identity and sexual orientation and stuff like that. So it was very eye-opening to be part of such a group that worked so hard to make our organization diverse. And like I had mentioned previously, there are so many different girls. A girl in my pledge class, like the first day, our first meeting as a pledge class, she came out to us and was like, you know what, I am gay, but I'm really happy to be here because all of you are inclusive and all of you want to be a part of this organization with many different types of women.
And so I just wanted to touch on some leadership roles that you gain out of being a part of a sorority. When I went into a sorority, I had no idea how vast the leadership opportunities were within it. But through being in CAS, we were very encouraged to become one of the leaders in an organization that we are part of. And so by becoming one of the leadership roles, you can either be on JCMT, which is the Junior Chapter Management Team, and the Chapter Management Team. They're two separate ones, and I don't know how it is for the other sororities, but I imagine it's very similar, maybe a few different titles. But we learn how to lead this group of women that ranges from 120 to 150 members. There's a lot of public speaking involved, there's a lot of teamwork involved, so by becoming part of the JCMT or CMT, you really work with the other leaders within the organization and learn how to take your chapter even a step further than where it is currently. And so I currently serve as the Director of Scholarship for Delta Gamma. And what I've learned from this position is how to take charge in a meaningful way. I've learned that you have to find your own way to lead, and it's not the same with every single person. So we actually discussed in my leadership class difficult conversations. And through this position, I've definitely had many of those difficult conversations. But just the connection between CAS and the position of Director of Scholarship, I've learned how to deal with these situations and make them right. And I found some of the benefits of holding a leadership position in a sorority is that it really gives you some experience for when you graduate from college, or if you're holding any internships or jobs. It really makes you feel comfortable within a large group of people. It helps your public speaking abilities, it helps you lead a team. So I think it's very beneficial to be in part of the leadership roles.
How do I see my involvement in my sorority affecting my future? Well, first off, it's a large network of women, and in Phi Sig we like to say, once a Phi Sigma, always a Phi Sigma. So I'm gonna be a part of this forever. There are so many, like we have mentioned throughout this entire presentation, diverse groups of women. As well as that, there's the development of important leadership skills. Serving on this committee, Sophie's role within her sorority, we're developing these skills now in addition to what we're learning in our leadership program. And in a way, it's shaping us into being leaders in our own right and in our own ways, as well as learning how to get along with all different types of people, which is an important leadership skill that we've talked about. We've done dialogues in class and whatnot. So continuing that into an outside organization has been really beneficial, as well as learning how to organize and lead effectively.
And so we just wanted to give you a little sense of some notable sorority women. So you can see the CEO of Kraft Foods, Secretary of State, Katie Couric, who I'm sure you're most familiar with, the author of The Help, if you've ever read that, and a U.S. Olympian as well. So we just wanted to give a little sense of the different leadership roles that they've continued to have.
These are references. Does anyone have any questions?
So you guys kind of touched on how like there's this misconception of sororities and things like that. So what do you guys think that we could do specifically here at American University so that people could get the right idea about sororities and learn that it's about like philanthropy and service and things like that?
Yeah, well,
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay, so basically he asked, what can we do on American University's campus to kind of battle those misconceptions that people have about sororities. So I know at least within my own organization, we do a lot of networking. So like for instance, today we were out on the quad, just handing out iced coffee, talking to prospective students, letting them know what we're about. And like we will talk about our philanthropy. We also table for that. I know you guys all table for your philanthropies as well. So we do try and be a public presence on campus, kind of, and just try and talk to people as best we can.
and I think another part of it, I'm sure you guys have seen the article, that it was actually very similar to our presentation. It was actually a brother from Beta that wrote the article about all these misconceptions. These misconceptions about Greek life, and was it through the Eagle?
It was through The Rival, which is an alternative sort of. It was through The Rival, which is a sort of alternative online magazine, I believe. It's run by AU students and written by AU students.
So I encourage you to look at that as well. Any other questions? Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. We wanted to start this presentation by showing you a bunch of images on the slide and asking you, what do you see? So keep your answer in mind and refer to it later on in the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bayad Muhammad Usman. I'm originally Sudanese, but I live in Laurel, Maryland. I'm a public health major and also a part of the College and Art Science program.
Hi, I'm Yasmin. I'm a sophomore majoring in finance with a minor in art history. I'm also part of the CAS Lead program, and I'm from Manama, Bahrain.
And our presentation today is about how Islam empowers our womanhood. The sources we use to derive our information for this presentation is from the Quran and the Hadith. The Quran's purpose is to explain, is God explaining to people what their purpose on earth is, and what His purpose to make the earth was, and what their responsibilities are as humans, and what they can expect in the afterlife.
So we also derived a lot of our information from using hadiths. So a hadith is a collection of traditions containing sayings by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and these sayings contain accounts of his daily practice. This is also a major source of guidance to many Muslims, apart from the Quran, because the Prophet Muhammad is seen as a role model.
So these are specific excerpts from the Quran that have to do with women in Islam. So the first quote that we have is, "O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul and created from its mate and dispersed from both of them many men and women."
So, this basically means that God created man and woman from the same nafs, which is soul in Arabic. This not only means that men and women are biologically equal, but that there was no special worth placed in the creation of man rather than woman. So in the eyes of God, man and woman are equal. The second hadith that we're looking at is, the believers, both male and female, are each other's guardians. They try to make others do good, prevent them from committing sins, perform their prayers, pay the religious tax, and obey God and his messenger. God will have mercy on them. He is majestic and all-wise.
And this quote showing that men and women are expected to work together in the community, and they're expected to hold each other accountable, and they have equal chances of getting into heaven.
The third excerpt we're looking at is, "O mankind, we have created you from a male and a female, and have made you into nations and tribes for you to know one another. Truly, the noblest of you with God is the most pious."
This is one of our favorite quotes from the Quran because it's showing that our religion has to do more than just sex and gender. It has to do with about all communities, and it has to do with intersectionality and then the importance of community throughout Islam.
So this slide pertains to the importance of mothers in Islam and the important roles that mothers play and how they ought to be treated in Islam.
One specific hadith that we have is from the Prophet. A man went up to him and said to him, "Who is the most deserving of my affection and my good treatment and my respect?" The Prophet replied to him and said, "Your mother." And then the man asked him, "Then who?" And then the Prophet replied again and said, "Your mother." And then the man asked him a third time and said, "Then who?" And then the Prophet once again said, "Your mother." Then when the man asked him a fourth time, then the Prophet said, "Your father."
So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did not say your father until the fourth time. This brings forth the important act of treating your mother with the most respect as a diligent and devout Muslim. So the second hadith that we're looking at is, "Heaven lies beneath your mother's feet." So remember, heaven is the most precious reward to any devout believer. To say that heaven is under your mother's feet proves how important gratitude and respect towards your mother is in Islam. So, there are various factual evidence from the Quran and Hadiths that prove a wife's role as an independent individual. So the first Hadith that we're looking at is, "The best among you are the ones that are best to their wife." So a devout Muslim is not only judged by his ability to perform his duties, such as praying and fasting for Ramadan, he is also seen as a man who treats his wife respectfully, since she is an independent individual who has the right to be treated with respect and gratitude. We are also looking at some misconceptions when it comes to marriage in Islam. The three that we're looking at is the right to choose a spouse, divorce, and the right to keep a maiden name. So I'm from Bahrain, and I do live in a country that is under Islamic Sharia law. And I can tell you guys that none of these misconceptions are true. A woman does have the right to choose her own spouse. She certainly has the right to have a divorce, and she definitely has the right to keep her maiden name.
The second point that we're looking at is from the Quran. The specific quote is, men are meant to be righteous and kind guardians of women, because God has favored some more than others, and because men spend out of their wealth." This quote is meaning men have financial responsibility and are protectors and maintainers of women. They have responsibility and liability over women, but they do not have authority. In no way does that equate to authority.
So the second point that we're looking at is, are we doing that? Oh, okay. So we're also looking at property when it comes to women in Islam. So from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, women were allowed to have their own property with marriage and even after divorce. However, this is just food for thought. Women in Alabama and Mississippi did not own the same right until the 1980s. Just think about that.
So also, going back to another way women have empowerment is through education. In Islam, education is vital for Muslims in Islam. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that it is required for all Muslims. And Iqra was one of the first words presented to the Prophet and one of the most repeated words in the Quran. Education is very important.
So now we're looking at how Islam personally empowers us. And I'm going to go back to a personal story to talk to you about this. So I'm going to talk about my first time in the United States. I was a 15-year-old and I was going to camp. So when people started realizing that I am a Muslim woman from the Middle East, someone came up to me and said, well, if you're a Muslim woman from the Middle East, then why aren't you wearing a tent over your head? So, as a 15-year-old, I had no idea how to respond to this boy. But if I had met him now, I would respond by saying, we are 1.6 billion people around the world. We come from diverse backgrounds and different cultures, and yet we are united in our Islam. As a woman who is a Muslim, I have the right to not wear a hijab, just as I have the right to choose to wear one. If a woman chooses to wear a hijab, a niqab, or no covering whatsoever, this does not label her in such a comical or demeaning manner.
Piggyback after what Yasmin has just said, in no way has my hijab deprived me from any opportunities. I've had leadership opportunities on this campus, and I do plan on working in the science field. Specifically, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his wife not only worked, but she was also his boss. So, yeah. And she was one of the most successful, richest people in the area. So Islam supports my educational pursuits and my career goals. And my main source of empowerment, leadership, and strength does come from Islam. After this presentation, when you see a Muslim woman now, what do you see?
Thank you. So we'd like to open the floor to any questions that you guys may have. Thank you, guys.
Good afternoon. My name is Owen James. I'm a sophomore. I'm in SPA as well as College of Arts and Science, double majoring in political science and philosophy. This talk is called Something About Politics, and I guess that's kind of what it is. It's just some of my thoughts on politics and specifically local politics. I'd like to start out with some statistics because it's what's more fun than statistics. First is voter turnout in Seattle. In 2012, voter turnout was 80%, and that's a pretty good number. I think the national average is around 60%, and Seattle is a fairly active city. What's disappointing, the disappointing side of this, is in 2015, just 3 years later, the voter turnout was 30%. What's the difference between these 2 years? Well, in 2012, we had a presidential election between Obama and Romney, and this is one of the things I want to talk about is local politics and why, people don't seem to care as much about local politics as they do about national politics. For one, the importance of local politics is incredible. They run everything in your city, from your trash to your schools to the roads you drive on. If anyone remembers when the government shut down a few years ago, if you lived in DC, I'm sure you remembered it. If you didn't, you might have completely missed it because it was one day and the trash still got taken out. Another thing I like about local politics, this is, you can see the philosophy coming out, is the local city or the state, the polis, that's the birthplace of democracy. Athens, the first democracy, had only 30,000 citizens. And I believe this is where democracy works best. One of the great things about local elections is how much it can actually get done. And that's one of the main complaints you get about Congress today, is things that don't happen. This Congress especially is known for getting almost nothing done, arguing continuously, no decisions being passed. But this is not the case on the local level. One of the other advantages of low turnout is that a few voters can actually swing the outcomes of these elections. Some of the closer elections in recent times, like CTAC 15, which was a campaign for $15 minimum wage in CTAC, that started out in the city of SeaTac, which is a tiny city south of Seattle, named after the airport. That shows its importance. Now $15 minimum wage just passed in California, one of the largest states in the union. But the vote in SeaTac actually only passed by 77 votes. That's less than 100 people. That's an incredibly small amount of people. That'd be like 3 of this room here. If we all got out and went to vote, I'm sure Austin would agree. You know, if we wanted to defeat this measure, we could do it. Some other things that were passed first on the local level before they were ever touched on the national level or made any progress on that front. Gay marriage was passed in a huge number of states before, you know, the Supreme Court even ruled on it. Or drug legalization, drug decriminalization. DC is one of the places that has done this, many other states as well, and this is an issue that, again, is going nowhere in Congress. Another important measure is campaign finance reform that was just on the ballot in Washington State and passed in Seattle. And that's pretty clear. All these measures passed by, you know, incredibly thin margins. There was a city council election in Washington. It's a district of 80,000 people, 80,000 voters. Obviously, 80,000 people did not vote in this. Only 30% of them did. And the vote was divided by 39 people. That's even less than the CTAC minimum wage. I mean, like 2 of this room could swing that election. And this is why I think this is so important for people to participate. If you really want your voice heard, it's completely possible to have your voice heard. This is how I first got into politics. There was a mayor election in Seattle, and I decided I wanted to be involved, so I emailed every single campaign. Exactly 1 got back to me, so that's great. But that was okay because it was a great experience, even though he only won 3% of the vote. But you know, it got me involved on a whole other level. Because there's so many things you can do to get involved and to change the local scene, like phone banking or going door to door for your favorite candidate or passing out flyers. And all these things really matter because all you need to win over is those 39 voters. You know, I just have to win over all of you in this room and I could swing an election. And that's why I want to leave this on a positive note, is that this is where leadership is really possible. This is where you can really change the world. I mean, you can see gay marriage once was, you know, just 10 years ago, it was an impossibility. And then now it's the law of the land by the Supreme Court, which would not have happened if there hadn't been pressure from the states that passed this on a local level. So yes, please, in this election, please vote in this election. And also there'll be other names there, hopefully not Donald Trump's name, but underneath those names, perhaps in your local city, your local state, or in your town, you know, or smaller. Please pay attention to those names or those ballot measures, because these things matter. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our symposium. So my name is Alicia Martin. I'm a sophomore in CAS Lead. I'm a major in Jewish Studies and minoring in history.
Hi everyone, my name is Coulter Moose. I am a junior at American University. I am majoring in psychology and minoring in education studies. So this project mostly focuses on both of our minors more than our majors. But we still love it, and we hope you do as well.
So we wanted to combine our love of history, primary source documents, and Coulter's immense love of education, mine as well. So we decided to come up with a program/interactive website entitled Ethical Leadership in Valley Forge. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about the whys of the project, kind of why we chose to do this sort of style, also its educational purposes in the academic world, and how this project relates to our time at CAS Lead. So a little bit about why we chose to do this topic. So obviously, Coulter and I are really into history, but we chose to do something that was interactive because I don't know if you guys have read the Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid. So basically, in the books, you act as a person in history. So the book will give you historical context, and then you're faced with decisions, and at the end of the chapter, you have to make a decision. Whatever decision you make will kind of affect if you live or die, honestly. So we chose to look at the ethical leadership in Valley Forge during the winter of 1777 to 1778. So you act as George Washington's personal advisor. So you're helping him make decisions, and that's the premise of this program.
So, as for the educational uses, there are a variety. The first section that I like to talk about is for the actual teaching purposes, what you can do to use this as an implement for teaching in the classrooms, either through an ethics class, looking at the different ethical frameworks that are used, rather through history, looking at the different historical contexts that were used, specifically Valley Forge in this case, but maybe broadening the questions to further other times during the Revolutionary War, and also to the leadership skills that are existing throughout these different choices. The fact that you have to make a choice and that these choices are so important is something worthy of note. As well, there are other educational uses are for the personal development of each of the students, for deeper thought into these important dilemmas that you have to make a choice. We'll go into one of the choices actually a bit later, so you'll get to learn about one of them, as well as recognizing the impact of one individual, how one individual's choices and opinions can make a vast difference in how events occur. And lastly, how simple decisions can really have important consequences. While the power of one individual is immense, not only is their singular power immense, but their impact on a scale of possibly, in this case, an entire battle in the Revolutionary War could have been gigantic.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how this relates to our time in CAS Lead. So last year we did a lot of analyzing ethical frameworks. We read a lot of just classical ethics, and we studied that. So this project kind of grows out of our love of studying like how we get our morals and where those come from, and how we can apply that to ethical dilemmas that we may face.
As for me, what I really took away from CAS Lead was not only learning about these amazing ethical frameworks, but also the methods of teaching them to students. Mostly just, I really enjoyed that we had interactivity within our classroom. We were able to talk and have a dialogue about these different choices and these different frameworks. And so I kind of wanted to also further that by allowing people to choose for themselves how they viewed the world, as well as allowing for choice in thought and for much deeper really thinking of the importance on leadership for each of the individual students so that they could further their own personal development as a whole.
All right, so we want to give you guys kind of a snapshot of what our website looks like. So we picked one of our favorite examples of an ethical dilemma that one may face if they were at Valley Forge. So this example is, it's kind of hard to read, so we'll kind of explain it for you. During the winter, a lot of soldiers were getting sick, there was disease spreading, and so as a doctor, you would have to decide, okay, who are you going to treat? Do you treat the people who are suffering the most? Do you treat the people that you feel like, well, they're not going to live, but you have to treat them. So how do you decide who to treat? And that's a very important issue that one could face. So the way that we divided these examples, we looked at 4 ethical frameworks. We looked at utilitarianism, kind of the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. So this is the example for that. Basically, you treat as many people as possible. You can't really be choosy about this. And then the second ethical framework we looked at was British liberalism. So it's emphasizing the freedom of the individual to choose for themselves who they're going to treat. The third choice we looked at was classical republicanism, which emphasizes civic duty and civic virtue. And then the fourth was Protestant Christianity. So this really emphasizes treating everybody fairly, in a just manner, and all are equal, and so there's really no favoritism there.
So ultimately, we have 6 of these different choices that people can make on this website. And when you get to the end of it, you're able to see, based on where you answered and how often you answered, which ethical framework you use the most often. Through this, you're better able to understand not only yourself, but the different ethical frameworks, as well as the history of Valley Forge at the time. So altogether, it really just does really help students not only to better their own education, but their own understanding of how they can have an impact and how each individual has so much potential power and leadership throughout their own life and the lives of others around.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Are there like other kind of events or things that you think maybe could be like kind of put in?
Oh yeah, so many. Yeah, I think this is just the beginning of something that you can do with this sort of program. We specifically chose Valley Forge. So I'm really into colonial history, and Coulter will laugh because he knows that I used to want to be a colonial reenactor. So when we were talking about that, we decided, okay, Valley Forge would be a really interesting historical context, but many others could be used as well.
And actually, jumping in on that, I've actually also been developing supplemental lesson plans that teachers could use this program for, and one of them is allowing students to create their own interactive adventures based on this same framework, but allowing them to not only choose the time period, but also choose whatever frameworks or whatever different points of view they wanted to use in deciding them. Yeah.
So it's like virtual time travel.
A little bit, yeah. Yes.
To go back to your example about the doctor, can you talk a little bit more about how the doctor is actually handling in that situation in Valley Forge that winter?
So do you want to go with that actually?
So we were able to analyze the diary of a surgeon at Valley Forge, and so while we only had that one primary source for this example, we were able to extract kind of these 4 frameworks that we looked at. So it was really a matter of urgency, but everyone was given the best care that under the circumstances and the shortage of doctors. So we tried to emphasize that as much as possible.
Yes.
Kind of a related question. What was like the ethical period do you have like the decisions that George Washington himself made, or that kind of thing laid out there?
So, well, funnily enough, the 4 different frameworks that we used, the first one being utilitarianism, is the one that we believe was most closely accurate to how George Washington was making decisions. As a general and a military man, he had to try and do what was best for the most amount of people. But the other 3 frameworks all kind of worked together to form how he acted. We actually found a book that gave us that example, and that's why we ended up choosing these 3. But yeah, so the final thing that we do want to say is, because this is a symposium, you now have a free 5 minutes to eat and drink to your merriment, and then we will be back with more presentations to follow. Thank you all so much.
My name is Liliana Zigo, and I am a double major in public health and psychology.
Hi, my name is Maria Esposito, and I'm a sophomore majoring in public health. So Lily and I did our project on the Syrian refugee crisis, missing leadership, and ethical issues not being faced.
So just to begin, the definition of a refugee is a person who's been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or a natural disaster. So these people have the choice to stay in their homes where it's very dangerous, or to flee by land or by sea to try to find refuge. When interviewed, many refugees will answer that they would like to go home if it was safe and if they were able to, and home is the place that they would be if they had the choice. So a little bit of background on the refugee crisis. It started in March 2011 with peaceful protest. As you can see, Assad, the dictator, ordered his troops to fire upon the civilians. There were some people in the army that defected to form the Free Syrian Army. Eventually, other factions joined, including other nations, people from Kuwait as well as the government. And so it quickly became a proxy war with many different factions. At this point in time, neither side, neither the rebels nor the government can win. And so it's stuck in a perpetual state of war. Just to clarify what jihad actually means, it does not mean holy war. It means to strive, to struggle, and to exert effort. So it's a broad concept in Islam, and it means you can struggle with yourself to improve the quality of your life. It can be in self-defense, or it can fight against tyranny and oppression, except that the extremist in this region has taken this word out of context.
Because of these adverse effects of armed conflict, many Syrians have been forced to live life as refugees. According to the UN, there's a 50-50% male to female ratio of registered refugees, and 40% of that ratio is children under the age of 11. And in terms of resettlement, more than 130,000 Syrian refugees have resettled, and more than 15,000 have received their visas in over 30 countries. So looking at this map, it can be seen that the red dots represent neighboring countries of Syria and have the highest number of registered refugees. And the green dots represent European countries that have received high numbers of Syrian asylum application. And also the Gulf countries are neighboring Syria, and they have offered 0 resettlement places for Syrian refugees. And not shown on this map is that the United States, their contribution, they've donated over $400 million in humanitarian aid to this crisis in the past year. And as of now, the US has taken in 1,500 Syrian refugees and pledged to take in 11,000 more. So, looking at this crisis through a public health lens, we can better understand the conditions and experiences many Syrian refugees are facing. So Syrian refugees are a high-risk population because of their exposure to daily violence, family separation, and displacement. While we would like to think that their living conditions in refugee camps are better than the previous life they fled from, we haven't seen that. Camps have poor sanitation, little access to clean water, and no proper bathrooms and freezing temperatures. So because of these conditions, communicable diseases like tuberculosis and the measles have become easier to spread, and as well as chronic conditions like diabetes and cardiovascular disease are prolonged.
Okay, so you guys can't really see that, but that says now what? And so because we are CAS Leadership and Ethical Development, we decided to look at this crisis from the different lenses of different ethical theories. So the first is utilitarianism. As Alicia and Coulter said, utilitarianism is the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. So if the world were to prescribe by this, they would make a list of all of the needs of the Syrian refugees and a list of everything that the countries can offer, and then allocate the refugees to each country based on what everybody can do, so it's the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people with not putting too much strain on any one country. The next is Kantian ethics. So he says that you have to respect the humanity in everybody, and that you are not allowed to make a rule that not everyone can follow. And so if you were to say, if a Syrian refugee walked to your house and knocked on your door, you weren't allowed to say, oh, you can't come in, but if somebody else knocked on your door, you could say you could come in. So if we ascribe by this rule, we would welcome everybody who needed our help, or nobody who needed our help. The social contract theory is the theory that we all abide by societal norms and the rules of our society to keep the peace. My personal opinion is that this is what most of the world has chosen to do. Each country is deciding what they will do, what aid they will offer, what refugees they will accept, depending on what will keep the peace in their country. So as Maria was saying, there are some countries who will not allow any. There are other countries that are willing to give aid, and then there's finally the third, countries that are willing to accept refugees. And finally is the virtue ethics. And so in virtue ethics, the way that people describe this is, what would a virtuous man do in your situation? And so this one is also ascribing to what is ethical, what is right, what is moral. And also in this situation, people would be welcoming of refugees, help them, because this really is a public health crisis, and one that needs to be addressed. So as this crisis has been going on now for about 5 years and is likely to continue, we don't know what the world will choose, but Maria and I hope that people will either be universalists or Kantians or virtue ethics, or view social contract theory as the society that we live in is the world, and that we want to do what's best for our world.
Hello everyone, I'm Jared Goodwin. I'm a sophomore studio art major in the CAS Lead in Ethical Development program. And today I want to talk to you about art and leadership. So my first question for all of you is, I really want to structure this kind of as a conversation. Sorry about that. I want to structure it more as a conversation instead of a kind of lecture style. So I really, if you have something to say, please raise your hand, interject, make some sort of flamboyant movement, some kind of noise, whatever you feel like doing. Push-ups, whatever. There's this question, what is art? And this is really a genuine question, because if you think about it, really, I think we all have this general idea of what art is, but we can't put it into objective terms. One thing I want you to do right now is kind of look around, think about every object in this room, the clothes on your body, the chairs, the room that we're actually in. Everything began as an idea, which was then made into a drawing, and then made into reality. So my question is, does that make everything in existence, everything man-made art? And that's a legitimate question, I think. Yeah, if everything begins with a drawing, are all drawings art? What makes one drawing better than another drawing? Where do these standards come from? These are questions that I think are still debated, and there really isn't one finite answer to them. I think if there was any finite answer, I think really artists would strive to kind of break that answer. So to the right here, you probably can't see it very clearly, but that is a Warhol. And it is a Pockets Warhol. And Pockets Warhol is actually a monkey. And he has a very similar style to the abstract expressionists, like Jackson Pollock. But this really is not to say that that work does not have any value. What I'm saying with this is, when we see these works of art, I'm basically comparing a monkey to one of the most famous artists of all time. So that can be a little problematic, I suppose. But really, I want you to kind of question the notions that we have about what makes good art and bad art. So that's really the point that I want you to take away. And that's not to say that Jackson Pollock's work does not have value. I think it really reflects the history. It reflects the culture that he was a part of at the time. It reflects a descent from social realism and post-World War II ideals. And another interesting fact, Mr. Pockets actually donates all of his proceeds to building a new barn for all of his animal friends to monkey around in Toronto. So interesting fact there. So anyone have anything to say at this point? No?
How much of the pocket Warhol sold?
I believe his latest piece was sold for $300. So probably more than mine will ever sell. But yeah, it's good. Yeah. So are there standards for what we call art? Fair question, since obviously I just compared one of the most famous artists to a monkey. Maybe not. But as I said before, we all seem to have this idea of like when we see it, we know what it is. But again, I ask, what would really be the point? I think that, as an artist myself, my immediate reaction to someone trying to have an objective definition of art would be to prove them wrong. I do the exact opposite of what they tell me, to do. If someone says don't do this, you need to do exactly, what they're telling you not to do, because that's the point where they're really trying to hold you back and, limit you to mediocrity, in my opinion. So I think, in this lack of a concrete definition lies the strength of art. I would say that, the lack of being defined and kind of being able to be held down is kind of what makes it intriguing. That's one of my personal favorite things about art. So that's a Pablo Picasso. It's titled Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It was made in 1907. Can you guys hear me with the mic? So what does art offer for the world? It's really impossible to quantify this. Its value, but I think it's very much subtle, and I think it happens kind of at the personal level, and maybe less at the larger kind of overarching, influencing level. But it's subtle, and I think it is influential. Present-day work is, indicating a trend towards the socio-political. So it's rooted in reality and things that will have actual consequences reflected in, everyday life. That's my work as well. I think, different artists are doing different things, but that's generally the trend. Another important fact is that it makes a statement that one person can really have an influence. I think good art makes you doubt, question, reflect, make you feel uncomfortable and experience disequilibrium. An interesting thing is that it transcends social class, race, all of these boundaries, and it also serves as somewhat of a catalyst for discussions on these really difficult topics. It gives a platform for things to be talked about in a more comfortable way. For me, art for the sake of art is somewhat insufficient. The last thing I want anyone to say about my work is, what a pretty picture. I think that that's really taking it superficially, and I think at that point I failed. Because, this is for me, I suppose, like expressionists, it's all about the beauty of art, but for me, it's really about what you can do with art that's important. So this is my experience. That's a portrait I did by Rustin. It's one of my earlier things I did last year. I don't know if you can really see it, but high school, I enjoyed art. Freshman year, I came in as an anthropology major. Then I switched to elementary education. Then I went to psychology and secondary education. And finally ended up in studio art. And that really happened last semester. Something clicked while I was in CS lead, kind of the experience, the class as a whole. Meg encouraged us to get involved in a different organization on campus. And I chose the Student Worker Alliance. And that's been a really eye-opening experience for me, and the relationships I've built have been extremely meaningful, and it caused something to happen for me that I didn't plan, but it seemed to just take off and happen naturally, and it's been incredibly meaningful. So this is a flyer I did in response to the arrest of Jim McCabe on campus, who was handing out flyers in TDR. He was peaceful, but he was removed by the police in handcuffs. And really, this is not to shame the university. This is not to, I love American University. It's really, what I'm trying to do is make this visible, because when a community member is treated unfairly like this, we need to speak up and make the school better and hold people accountable. Okay, so back to the point, jihad. As previously established, jihad is misinterpreted. This is in response to some Islamophobic posters that were found on campus, and it's really just my effort to support the Muslim student population. And this is my most recent project. It's handling at 10,950. That's how many days she has been. This is Maria, by the way. She works in housekeeping. How many days she's been working for American University. So yeah, it's been about 30 years. She needs to clean 2 buildings by herself. I really want to bring this mistreatment to light because we're better than this. And I just wanted to talk about this too. Yesterday, I just added this today actually. Yesterday, you can't see it, but I found a note on the wall in my studio. It said, in Spanish, it said, why do we stand for this mistreatment and abuse? And that really spoke to me, because I think it was one of the workers. I'm not sure, but it really is that community aspect that I want to have in my work. So I went a little bit over time, so sorry about that. But thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I hope you guys are having a great time. My name is Kathleen Lawler. I'm a sophomore in CAS lead. I'm studying environmental science with a minor in Spanish.
Hi guys, I'm Brianna Bello. I'm also a sophomore in CAS lead and I'm studying public health with a Bachelor in Arts.
Before we get started, I wanted to give you an opportunity to go through my journal from the program we will be talking about. This journal has scientific log entries, diary entries, as well as notes from the lectures. So I'll pass that around. Also, be careful. There are some loose leaf papers that might fall out. So take a look. Today we will be presenting on C semester and leadership. So what is C semester? C stands for C Education Association, and it is an internationally recognized and AU-approved study abroad program that offers students the opportunity to sail around the world while getting college credit. C semester is dedicated to the exploration, understanding, and stewardship of the oceans, also the studying of humanity's relationship with the oceans. It was founded in 1971, and since then they have developed numerous programs that offer students the unique opportunity to explore the oceans, develop scientific research skills, all the while growing as people, and both onshore and on their tall ships. The program we went to, and you can see a picture on the left side, is called Aloha Aina, People and Nature in the Hawaiian Islands.
So just to give some background, as part of this College of Art and Sciences leadership program, we're taught that as developing leaders, we're to seek out essential opportunities to promote leadership skills and, to promote leadership skills. So what does that mean? Why are these skills important? These skills are important because when they build workplace competence, they also develop effective and practical problem-solving techniques in the workplace, and they progress ethical and moral persuasion abilities. So our leadership experiences that help to develop these particular skills on our Aloha Aina trip were boat checks, teaching kids from Lanai scientific research that we had been doing. We were crew members on the ship, and we had to present a final scientific project of our research at the end of our 6-week program. So I just want to give some personal insight on what it was to be a crew member on the ship. So during the C semester program, I found that it was a very unconventional platform for Catherine and I to develop leadership skills. During the program, we served as crew members on the Robert C. Siemens, which was a 134-foot long tall ship, and it was a sailing vessel, but it was also a student sailing vessel, so we were doing research, but we were also sailing the ship to navigate different islands. We fostered development because we were kind of thrown into being leaders. We were accountable for each other's lives. We had to basically learn all the different parts of the ship. So say there was an emergency, we had to know where the first aid kits were so that if we all had to evacuate the ship, we could have the essentials that we needed to survive. Also, we had to be alert and knowledgeable about the ship just for efficiency purposes so that we could get to our destinations on time and really just enjoy ourselves.
Not only did we develop leadership skills, but also we developed our own set of ethics along the way. Ethics are the set of principles that govern a person's behavior, and they're very important to C semester. Every single C semester program has an ethical component built into the curriculum, and since ours was Aloha Aina, people and nature in the Hawaiian Islands, we spent a lot of time dedicated to getting to know the Hawaiian people and also their sustainability efforts. To do this, we went on a lot of volunteering trips. We spent a lot of time helping to build fish ponds. We cleared an area of invasive plant species, and we spent a couple of days teaching local kids about marine ecosystems. We even went to the top of Mauna Kea, a mountain on the Big Island, and met with protesters who were fighting to preserve their sacred mountaintop. Of these volunteer trips, my favorite was definitely helping to restore the Hawaiian fish ponds on Oahu and Molokai. Hawaiian fish ponds are an incredibly advanced aquaculture technique. The basic principle, if you can see the lower left-hand corner, the bird's eye view, it's a section of the shore that is walled off with barred gates built in so that when the tide comes in, so do a lot of baby fish, who then eat the algae cultivated in the pond and grow too large to swim back out. This ingenious technique was originally developed by the ancient Hawaiians hundreds of years ago, but still today, with all of our science and technology, this is still one of the most efficient, productive, and sustainable agricultural methods in the world. Unfortunately, when Western imperialism and industrialization reached the islands, the use of the fish ponds halted. We met with community leaders who were fighting to restore the fish ponds, not only to teach their children about their heritage, but also to provide a reliable, affordable, and earth-friendly method of feeding their community. Overall, it was an absolutely incredible experience. I felt so honored that I could help them with their cause, all the while building my own set of ethics along the way.
You should be a leader. So basically, these are just pictures from our experience. It was a really fun trip, and we just got really close with the members of the ship, and I learned a lot, and you got full credit for it, so that was awesome. And moving forward, as a premier leadership program in the College of Art and Sciences, us as lead students are taught to be sensitive to opportunities that will complement the curriculum and the purpose of the program. So LEAD encourages active application of leadership skills, ethical knowledge, and a prime example is the way LEAD introduced us to the C semester program. We were here in Battelle Atrium, and we were encouraged, we weren't forced, we were encouraged to come to the open house for C semester. It was the first time that it had ever come to AU's campus, and Catherine and I just felt compelled to apply. I didn't have summer plans, so I was like, it'd be cool to go to Hawaii. So I applied, I got in, and I was given financial aid and just able to take advantage of an opportunity that really just influenced the trajectory of my education now. So taking advantage of experiences like this here at AU are very important. So we just want to encourage students here just to kind of go for whatever it is AU has to offer. Study abroad, internships, alternative breaks, volunteering. Take advantage of what it means to be a wonk at AU. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can be nerdy. It's okay. Because as pioneers and ambassadors, it's important just to really step out on a limb and just get involved in programs that will help you to develop new skills and put them into practice. Additionally, experiences like this expand horizons, increase networks, and build confidence.
Overall, Bree and I had a really amazing experience with C semester. and CES Lead helped us do that. We were able to grow as people, develop leadership and ethical skills, as well as getting college credit and having a blast. So we hope that all of you are able to have similar experiences. Thank you for your time. Any questions? Yes.
Aside from the summer, when else does the program happen?
Okay, so the question was, aside from summer programs, what other programs does C-Semester offer? They offer full-time semester, so fall and spring, and you can do as many as you want, as many programs. I also know that after you have done one of their programs, they can hire you to work on this ship as a part of the crew. I know a lot of people who did that. So that's even more involvement with sailing and exploring the ocean. Thank you. Any others? Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and bearing with us for this long in this lovely, warm room. Right here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the ethical and leadership failures of racism, and want to explore this through the lens of Toni Morrison. So, we all learned about the civil rights movement in history class. We learned it was a group of individuals working together to overcome bigotry and racism. We learned that as citizens united together under strong leadership, trying to make a difference in our community. And through that, they were able to make a difference in the hearts and minds of the American people and at the highest echelons of power. However, all too often, we relegate the civil rights movement to the past. We think it's something that's set in stone, that doesn't continue to impact us today. However, as you can see, racism is a very real phenomenon. We can see it in the faces that you see on the slideshow. Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray. We all know these names and we all know what they represent for our society. Or we can see it in statistics. The Federal Reserve says that white households are 6 times richer than African American households. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, 20.5% of African Americans don't have a high school education, compared to 9.7% for white households. And finally, according to the CDC, 19.6% of African Americans have diabetes, whereas the corresponding number for white households is 9.5%. These are an atrocity. Out of this tremendous failure in our society has emerged a new movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's already received considerable attention at the highest levels of the United States society. It has already changed police practices throughout the country, and it has got the attention of presidential candidates, including Hillary Clinton and various others. However, they still have a long way to go. We can see here that change can never happen just instantaneously. We need to continue to work forward, and I think we need strong leadership within our community to make a difference. And I believe the strong leadership can be informed by this woman here, Toni Morrison, who's a Nobel Prize laureate who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. So I'm going to analyze 3 of her different books to develop a better understanding of the ethical failures of racism and leadership considerations to take into account. The 3 books I'll be looking at is Song of Solomon, Beloved, and The Bluest Eye. So first off, Song of Solomon, it's one of her most famous books. It was cited in her Nobel Prize acceptance award in 1993. It focuses on one person, Milkman, who is an African American growing up in Michigan, who continually feels disconnected from his society. And it's only through reconnecting with his community and with his family background in a sort of chaotic search for gold that his aunt and father found and subsequently lost, that he's really able to discover who he is and what it means to live as an African American in the United States society. The second book is Beloved, which many of us probably read in literature class. This focuses on one character, Setha Garner, who's a former slave. She flees slavery to the free state of Ohio. However, due to fugitive slave laws, her owner comes to try and reclaim her. While he's doing that, she kills her baby girl. After that, the owner leaves, and she continues to live the rest of her life, haunted both literally and figuratively by the ghost of her dead daughter, until the dead daughter, beloved, comes back in human form years later and continues to haunt her. The final book is The Bluest Eye, which focuses on Pecola Breedlove, who is an African American living in African American population part of a town. She continues to feel marginalized within society, and because of white culture emphasizing the importance of the white complexion, she begins to feel very uncomfortable in her own skin. And she eventually results in her hating herself, and that, along with other factors such as her father raping her, results in her eventually going crazy and imagining she has the bluest eyes. So first off, some ethical failures of racism. The first one would be that it really limits human potential of African Americans. We can see this specifically with Pecola Breedlove, who is really unable to develop her full potential because she focuses so much on becoming white. And because she can never accomplish that, she learns to hate herself. And eventually this results in her going mad and not being able to really become a positive part of her community. The second area is that of ethical failures associated with racism is that it convolutes incentives and ethical judgments for some African Americans. We can see this in Beloved, where Setha Gardner, because of the atrocities of slavery, she kills her own daughter. And that sets up the foundation for what Morrison talks about in Song of Solomon, where she explores the concept of reverse racism, where Milkman's friend, Guitar, goes on a quest to get revenge on all of the African Americans that are killed by white supremacists. For example, if white supremacists kill 4 African American girls, he will kill 4 white girls. And Toni Morrison explicitly condemns any form of violence. However, she reiterates that this reverse racism has its foundations in the racism of white society in general. So now, because of the horrors and atrocities of racism and the continuing implications of slavery, she also suggests some leadership solutions as well. The first one is to become involved with the community, to develop your own self-esteem. We can see again with Pecola Breedlove how many people are unable to really develop, and Pecola didn't have a great family, family environment or a place where she felt comfortable. And as a result, she continued to sort of hate herself, and the people around her hated her blackness. And as a result, she wasn't able to develop. We can contrast this to Milkman, who through immersing himself in the African American community and in his roots, he was able to develop a better sense of who he was. And from there, he was able to make a positive contribution to society. And then from there, we can focus on how the community is the most important component in addressing racism. We can see this in Beloved, where Setha Gardner, who's plagued by her dead daughter Beloved, eventually starts to lose her mind. However, Denver goes out into the community and she finds support there. And together, the wider community is able to come and they're able to exorcise Beloved from the house. Finally, Toni Morrison also explores the importance of the right motivations in really addressing these leadership failures. She doesn't really mention that many white characters in her novels, which again expresses her need for the African Americans themselves to really lead the movement against racism. However, she does mention some. The most notable example would be the Baldwins, who are in Beloved and they help Setha Gardner sort of develop after fleeing from slavery. And while they are abolitionists, they also are racists as well. And Toni Morrison emphasizes that this is not okay, that they need to have the right motivational standpoints as well when sort of becoming involved with this movement. So it shouldn't be a fad that we become involved with, but it should be a continuing thing that we become involved with to address the inequalities in society. In conclusion, racism still remains a very component part of American society, And we as a community, both African American and white, Asian, Hispanic, everyone should work to address the gross inequality in our society. And we can do this in big or small ways. A small way is to take implicit association tests, whereby we can learn our own biases, and through learning, we can more fully understand where our biases are. In addition, we can also become involved. We need people involved with these movements in order to create a more just society. Thank you, and are there any questions?
Hot in this room.
Because you're here.
Can everyone hear me all right? Is this good? Okay. So, thank you all for being here. I'll be the last speaker, and I want to talk about leadership without ethics. So, when we're talking about leadership and the leadership skills that we've applied, but when they're used in an unethical manner. Specifically, I want to talk about dictatorships and tyranny. So what do we think of when we think of dictators? What do we have in mind? We have people that are ruthless, that are cunning, that are power hungry, that are manipulative. We have people that in the eyes of their citizens are gods, and we do not know any distinction between right and wrong between those people. So what is a dictatorship? Well, loosely defined, a dictatorship is when one singular person, one singular leader, has the entire authority of a country. They have the entire government, the entire military, and their entire economic assets in the palm of their hand. So when we're thinking about dictatorships, do we really know if they come out? There's no naturally born dictatorships. They come from somewhere. They come from something. So that begs the question that if there are dictatorships in the world, can a democracy become a dictatorship? And I often hear this question, I often hear the answers that we have civil society, we have too much resources, too much intellect, too much knowledge of the past to let something like this happen, to let these past histories and these past failings happen again. But time and time again we've said that, and time again we will see the same things come out. So I think it's important to identify how these tyranny and how this leadership failing can come about even from the most stable democracies. So let's talk about you for a second. Where would you need to be within a democracy or in some country to understand that it can become a dictatorship? Because they don't come out of anywhere. They have to come from something. So when talking about you, let's look at some statistics from history. It's likely that there's some sort of unemployment. There's some sort of loss of job, some sort of loss of meaning in your life to have caused you to this path to happen. It's likely that you have lost some economic motivation. Economic mobility is not possible. You lack the funds, you lack the inspiration to be able to move. But most importantly, and most significantly, you're angry. You're angry at the system, you're angry at what happens, and you're angry at the things that are going on. Now, these problems are complicated. They come from huge socioeconomic things that not only span the range of a country, but can span the range of a world. And these problems aren't going to be solved by a single person or a single action. They're going to take complex solutions for complex problems. But you're angry and you're blinded by your rage. You don't see that. You need a simple solution, something to grasp onto, and something to be able to figure out so that you can return to where you once were. And that's where they come in. You see this person shining on a hill, saying that they're going to be returning to greatness, that we can return to what we once were, and to bring about what we could be, a new age of prosperity. And in your blind rage, you'll be able to follow them because you want greatness as well. So what can we look at in these? What kind of calling signs can we see? Well, there's likely a quote. Most campaigns do have quotes, but there's likely some saying, some sort of message that they're framing. They try to return to greatness, to return to prosperity, to bring about this new age. It's a unifying quote. It's a call and response. It's something that we can say together and we know what it means, and we can hold on to that. There's likely a design, some sort of color or some sort of image that unifies the people, that they can banner, that they can call upon, that they can unify under, so that we know what they mean. And most importantly, there's usually a policy involved. And many political campaigns, we will see multiple policy that has to come up, that has to be sprung about and change what we are. But with these kind of people, there's usually a single policy, something that you can really pinpoint in a person's policy, that's what they're motivated. And that motivation drives you. That single policy, that single thing, if we can do that one thing, we can return to greatness. We can return. So under this unification, I want to try something with you all. And I want you to stand up for a second, and I want to try and explain. And as sort of an example of how this unification works, I want you all to do something. Anytime I say the word left, I want you to stomp your left foot. And anytime I say right, I want you to do the same thing. And I want everybody in this building to hear us. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. All right, everyone can sit down. I'm going to do that for a second because I wanted you to feel that for yourself, that unity and that power that you can bring from being part of a collective action. It's a very powerful force. You feel like you can take on anything with that. And with that comes a lot of dangerous things, because that's what that person has control. They have that control of that unity, of that power of the majority. So when we're looking at these groups, now comes election. And there's other people around that will have different campaigns and different ideas. And so when you're building up these people, you need to, one, bring in people for your own campaign, and two, you need to minimize the people of the other campaigns. And you need to strengthen your own and weaken the others. And the best way to unify the people, the most effective way, is through paralyzing fear and to make the other groups feel smaller in comparison. Time and time again, when we see these leadership skills from dictators, it's often at the slight of many poor or oppressed people, of minorities in that area that are facing severe problems. They're usually the targets of the racism and of homophobia and other actions that cause these dictatorships to rise up, that cause them to become what they are. So then election comes around. You cast your ballot, and everybody casts their ballot. And if enough people cast their ballot for your people, they win. And the dictator is now in control. But it's not exactly an immediate thing. You know, we have the president who just got elected, but what exactly are the steps to become this dictatorship? Well, for one thing, there's usually a military involvement, something abroad, something that we can associate with an attack, something where we need we need the ability to be involved in other countries in a military effort, in a strength and a military effort, and this causes fear among the people. It causes a paralyzing and crippling fear. And the one thing we want when we're scared is to feel safe and to feel stable. And that's what the leader offers. They offer a sense of stability, of comfort to the people. And a dictator will cause stability. And because of that stability, they're allowed to get away with other things. If military involvement can be gotten abroad and control can be gotten abroad, why can't it be controlled here? Why can't we up the military enforcement? Why can't we up a little bit of spying? Especially if there's military involvement abroad, especially if there's a war, military action. They have more excuses here to do that for fear and security of our own safety. But because of that, we risk our fears of losing any freedoms that we might have because of that. And once we have the resources in place to do that, then we start to see laws that are put in place against these people, against the minorities that might have been judged upon to win this dictatorship and the power. We might have laws and policies against these people so that we can feel safer. And then time and time again, those policies might go too far. We might see jails, or we might see much, much worse actions being attributed. They're stepping stones. These are building blocks of different policies that build upon each other. They don't happen in one fell swoop. A president is elected, military effort is done abroad, people come in, they feel scared, they need to feel secure, and that security leads to policies and to action that causes repercussions and causes more power for the president. And then soon after you've elected that president, it starts to look less like an elected official and more like a dictator. I want to end this statement because we've talked a lot about leadership. Everybody here has heard wonderful speeches about leadership in arts and in science, in race and religion and gender, about leadership that we can take in other countries and abroad, and leadership that we can apply right in our own backyard. But it's important to know that as we've developed this leadership, leadership is a skill. It's not a guarantee of the right thing to do. And all of us as leaders need to be involved and need to make sure that when we take leadership action, we're taking an ethical and a moral approach to these actions. Because if we do the wrong thing, this might be what ends up happening. Thank you. I also want to note that I was inspired to make this. I'm an environmental science major, but I was inspired to make this from a German movie known as The Wave. It is about a teacher who does a similar experiment to a class who thinks that dictatorships can come about, and they do this experiment. They show the stepping stones of how a classroom can become infatuated and idolize this teacher and become a dictatorship. So if you're interested in kind of more of this thing, I would highly recommend this movie. Is there any other questions?
So I know my own research into the rise of totalitarian regimes in the interwar period of World War I and World War II. I noticed that there's a lot of, in all major cases in Italy and Germany and the Soviet Union, there was severe levels of political instability. There's a large amount of inability within the governments to get anything done, and there was growing frustration with the political system. Do you think that has a major role in sort of the rise of dictators in your own sort of research?
So the question was about how, especially within World War II, the actions or the inactions of certain countries in Italy and Germany led to the rise of these dictators. And I definitely do think that has a major part to do with it. If you look at the rise to dictators and that anger that comes about, one major surefire way to get the people angry at a government system is that if they can't do anything, if they're locked in gridlock, if they're locked in turmoil against each other, they're going to want they're going to want something entirely different. If it's not efficient, it's got to go. Any other questions?
How did you happen to watch this film?
So I was looking through movie recommendations when I was bored one day over the break, and I had never heard of this film before, and I thought I would just kind of give it a shot. I was very interested in the theory because we all know about dictatorships and how horrible they are, and we all kind of live in this democracy, but we kind of don't know the in-between, how one can lead to the other, and I was really interested in seeing the methods and the actions that could cause one to the other. Any other questions?
I have one final question. Do you think democracies will inherently lead to a totalitarian government?
The question was, do I think democracies can inherently lead to a totalitarian government? And I don't think so. I think one of the cornerstones of democracy is allowing us to speak and make our own actions and sort of upset the system, but I think it has to be the right type of democracy. I mean, there are plenty of countries and regimes that are democracies that are completely happy and that are really no risk of causing these totalitarian regimes, but I think once they stop working, once we allow them to go too far, or once we allow them to, or once they become inoperable, I feel like they start to cause anger within the people. And I don't feel like it's necessarily the system that causes it, but it's this kind of air of we need something different and we need something to happen.
Seems like we have pretty much every single factor that makes for a dictator present in our country at the moment.
This is not a statement on the political process, by the way. Any statements about any of the political candidates right now? I just want to clarify that.
I was going to ask you, what your perspective was on that. The fact that literally every factor is present in present-day America for the making of a dictator.
So he's asking about every factor kind of being present in modern America and if that's something that's possible here. And I definitely do. Under the right circumstances and under the right conditions, I think that we can be led slowly but surely into something that looks a lot like this. And that's sort of why I want to present on this, because I feel like it's important to know these actions and to know what causes these dictators to come about, because I feel like it's sort of like within the bystander effect. One of the best ways to undermine it and understand how to stop dictators from rising is to know how they rise. And I feel like just because we have the systems in place doesn't mean we have to go there. I think we can take a step back, look at our political process, look at the political system that we have, and sort of see what changes can we make for the better for every input of every individual, not just a single leader who is fueled by power and by rage. All right, thank you.
Thank you for coming to our CAS Lead Symposium. We hope you'll stay engaged with us and continue to discuss these ideas and develop your own. And to the first-year students who are here, we're all looking forward to being here this time next year and hearing your presentations, so start thinking about them. But meanwhile, stay engaged with the classmates a year ahead of you. Thank you all very much for an excellent symposium.